welcome to my Blackbeard guide for the emo matchup. Um, yeah, let's just get straight into it. I want to start with the basics. This is somewhat of a mini summary. If you need to watch for 10 seconds, look at these. First, you want to go second. Both his and your curve are significantly better going second. He wants to drop his 10 costs as soon as he can, and you want to drop your Burgesses, and you want to deny him his curve. You want a leader ability starting at him having 4 done, that way you can prevent his 5 Elder search. And afterwards you're of course also going to be covering some of the KO on plays. Emo is a large part about why we play the current deck list, why we play this very Burgess heavy focus. Previously we were using the KO engine, but that obviously doesn't work against him. Our game plan is to just bring out as many Burgesses as possible and make them as big as possible, and then just go for game using them and Black Hole to negate his blockers. Um, Leader ability. So this is pretty complicated for Emu. So he has a couple of on plays that we need to be wary of. So he has his 1-cost Searcher, Shalria. It looks at 3, but it does also fill the trash with 3 cards right away, giving him a big boost. He can play Saturn, the 4-cost searches for 5, but it doesn't fill the trash. And then he also has Mars, the 6-cost, which shoots a base 5-cost. Once you have a solid target for that, you're definitely going to be turning it off. There's technically also the 9-cost Stussy that people play, but by then we're going to be turning off on plays anyways. With the searching, it can be somewhat argued over when it's worth it, but of course when we have a target for Mars, something like our blockers, then we're going to want to turn it off by default. Preventing a searcher is a card negative or a card neutral. So when you play searcher, you play 1 card and you get 1 card, so that's neutral, right? And if we lose a card using leader ability to prevent him from going neutral, that is a negative for us if he doesn't play that card. If he does play the card anyways, for example, he might still play Saturn. Now it's a neutral situation. We both get 1 card less than we otherwise would. The advantage we have here is that he loses the best out of 5 that he would otherwise take, and we lose the worst out of our current hand. And that is the general plan. We're trying to make his game plan less consistent and slow down the rate at which his trash accumulates. So by preventing his searchers, especially Saturn, he sees significantly less of his deck, and instead of seeing through potentially what might otherwise be his entirety of it, he may only see half his deck, for example. And that significantly increases our chances that he is missing key combo pieces. Still, if we're always trashing, we might be wasting cards, and so we somewhat have to balance it with the cards that we need as well. The matchup is a probability matchup in a way, where we need to try to minimize his chances of finding everything, because if he does find everything smoothly, our chances at victory are very, very low. But if he doesn't, we have pretty good chances. And so we have to look into those probabilities a bit. The probabilities. So I've gone through the various likelihoods and probabilities of how many things the emu is going to hit. Now, there's 2 big things. The first is how many 10 costs they find, and the second is how many of the individual 5 elders they manage to have in their trash by the time they play the 10 cost. And so I went through some common numbers for how many cards of their deck they're gonna see. This is for how many elders they will see, how many of the individual ones. So the minimum here is 17. That is how many cards they see if they get no searchers and take 2 life. So 5 from starting hand, 5 through the draw they get through the turns, and 5 more through the extra draw they get through their leader ability, and then 2 more from Cards they take to hand from life. So here we can see that in most cases they will not actually have all 5 elders if they don't hit all 4 searchers. So that is a great scenario for us because now in 2 out of 3 games we have to deal with 4 elders. Well, and even less potentially. Now, if they get one searcher off, such as a searcher event, that amount goes up quite a bit. So now we reach a point where they have a 50% chance of hitting all 5 elders at 10 dawn. Um, I think this you can just kind of assume as a minimum as long as they find one searcher. They're good. 23 is if they find 2 searchers, so 2 events or an on play and an event. Sorry for that. And here already we have a strong tendency towards them finding all 5, but it's still far from guaranteed. 1 out of 3 games they just won't hit all 5. Then we get to 25. This is what you would have as if you would get one search and then a 5 people search, and the chances go up again. And we reach 28, which is another 3 search on top of that. And we can see once we get to 31, it's all but guaranteed that they find all 5 elders. And this is kind of a lot of what we base our decision to use to use our leader ability or not, because if we take a comparison here between the draw 20 and the draw 28, so 20 is what you would get by the normal draw on top of one searcher. So if they get one searcher, they have a 50% chance of finding all 5 elders. But if they see 28 cards, they have an 85% chance of finding all elders. Um, and that would be the difference between turning off on plays for one 3-cost search, for one 3-person search and one 5-person search. And that difference in how likely they are, for example, to hit the individual elders is why we also try to use leader ability to deny the consistency in search. It also just is important to keep in mind, or just kind of good to take to note here. It's easy to assume that them getting all 5 elders is some kind of default built into the deck, but it's not. In a lot of these scenarios, it's a coin flip or better for you, where they might actually not find all those. So you will run consistently into games where your opponent will not find all 5 elders, and depending on who's missing there, that can guarantee you a win. Continuing to how many 10 costs. So kind of, yeah, similar numbers. Question just how many are you going to be able to find? At the minimum here, at the 17 draw, there is still a 40% chance of finding 2 or more, and that's by 10. So you know there will be more after that, since after the first is played, you get another draw, more life, more time for searches. And already at 23, so 2 searches or so, you're at a point where 35% chance for one, or 0, which is not too bad, but we quickly get to a point where he most likely is going to have 2 or more elders, and the difference between him having 2 versus him having 3 is not that big for us. The question for us is mostly just, does he have a second one after playing the first, right? And technically, does he have a first one at all? As we can see here, there is some chance that he just doesn't find one. But again, it's important to keep in mind your opponent may not have all of them, especially if he trashes some. However, it does remind us that the main reason we cut the consistency is for chances like this, where he doesn't draw as many of the elders, and he doesn't draw the ones he wants as reliably. Mm, and yeah, connected to that, aside from the consistency, we're also limiting his trash by turning off on plays. So he has various abilities that come online at various trash intervals. The most obvious being the 7, where all the elders gain immunity and their keywords. The keywords is relevant here because especially Warcury getting blocker and Nustro getting rush are a big impact. It's unlikely that by the time he plays something like Nustro, he won't have 7, but it's still worth considering, keeping in mind. Um, at 10, Nustro and Jupiter get their minus 2000 and plus 2000 effects. So if he is being a bit slow, there's a good chance that by the time he plays those, they won't be ready yet. And that is really nice. Mm, if he's being quite slow, he hasn't really found searchers and he's barely gotten to 10 or so. Remember that his when he plays the 10 cost, he will reduce the cards in his trash by a good amount. Well, he puts that and one more card in trash and grabs 5, so it's a minus 3. So that may actually cut him out of the range of Nustro and Jupiter, but it's unlikely. If he doesn't have the searchers, he loses trashes 1 to 2 cards a turn, one from his leader ability, and one from either discard, like countering out, or maybe he played an elder and it died. But it's not that fast, and he often does not find all 7 that quickly. So if he only has one searcher, or even 0, our blocker Shiryu may actually be able to get a KO off. Mm, yeah. Later on, he gets the 6k leader, and that can be a minor inconvenience. Limiting it now does delay that and probably prevent him from ever activating it. There's also a little bit of a note. There's a Shirahoshi that some play that lets you put 2 cards from your trash back in your deck in order to make your opponent discard a card. And that's annoying when he plays it, but it's generally fine since he can only use it once at best and goes -2 in his trash. Mm, so that's something to keep in mind that can actually be quite beneficial if he decides to make that play. So, searching and trashing. What you're going to be searching for and what you're going to be trashing is of course going to change over the course of the game. So early on you're looking for searchers, burgers, and Kuzan, the 5 cost. These are of course also going to then be the targets you're looking for in your opening hand and what you're trying to mulligan for. The best searcher remains the stage, and after that Lafitte and my age are pretty equal. Lafitte gets the extra pseudo blocker protection, but my age gives the spike, which really does help against Burgess. Having the 4-cost Burgess on curve is especially nice if you're going second. Later on, you're mostly looking for Black Hole to finish the game, and for the 5-cost Kuzan, since you're probably going to be running low on cards, and that allows you to play a card such as Burgess or a blocker if you need to, while still having something to trash. Yeah, for the searchers stage, my age Lafitte, and those are kind of your first targets. You want to make sure you have 2 or more Burgesses in trash, and you always want to try to play them using Kuzan. Mm, you need at least 2 Burgesses, and so even if a searcher or something else may be tempting, if you have 0 Burgesses, then always take Burgess, and if you're only at 1, you still may want to lean towards that second Burgess if you don't have other searchers set up. Because if you don't get those Burgesses ready in the trash, you're not going to have the board and you're not going to have a win condition. Trash targets early on, the 10 cost teaches are bricks. Vortex doesn't help early on. The blocker Shiryu is pretty dead in this matchup unless your opponent doesn't manage to fill up their trash relatively quickly. Um, any duplicates you can get rid of because there's few things that we'd want more than one of. So whether it's the 6 cost Kuzan, even sometimes the 5 cost Kuzan, But also it's fine to get rid of a black hole, especially if you're running 4. Devon is always nice to get rid of because even if you ever play here, it's going to be using Kuzan, and Burgess is a fine target as well if you're planning to grab him using Kuzan as well. If you just based on your curve need the Burgess to play by himself, then of course you're going to want to keep that, like on your 4-dawn turn. Mm, Later on, you can trash basically anything that's not black hole. You reach a point where your only goal is to use the things you have on board, negate the blockers he has, ideally with a double black hole, and then swing for game using Burgess's maybe 110 cost teach or so that you have set up, a blocker that may still be left, and your leader swing. If you're not quite there yet, then you're also going to want to keep the 5 cost Kuzans to play, and maybe a 10 cost if you have it as a smooth kind of um, thing to play on curve. Whenever you're trashing, you can trash relatively freely, but do make sure you have at least 2 black holes left in your deck plus your hand, because if you trash too many and you end up only having 1 left or even 0, then you will just not have a reliable way of getting through the Emu's Elder blocker frontline, and so make sure to keep at least 2 somewhere alive for your options. And similarly, if you're running low on cards, keep a 5 cost Kuzan ready. We move to how to win, the general win plan. Um, in the simplest terms, build multiple Burgesses, play them through Kuzan so you can keep card advantage, and swing big with those to finish your opponent. You want to set up cheap blockers, the various 1 costs you have, but also others um, when you don't have a cheaper option. Your opponent doesn't have any way to get rid of these 1 cost blockers, so each Caribou, each Vivi ends up equating to an entire Burgess, so they're important to set up early. You're trying to weaken his consistency using your leader ability and also Black Hole to reduce the draw he would get from Mercury, and that will significantly weaken his combos. For the mid game, you're going to try to go for board control. His 5 Elders are very efficiently played using the stage, but they do only have 5,000 attack during your turn at least, and so they're easy to swing into with your leader, with 5 cost Kuzan, even with something like a Shiryu you may have played, and definitely with your Burgesses once they're at 7,000 or so. So until then, Dawn, you want to go for the board control and try to take as firm of a grasp on the board as you can until the 10 Dawn turn kicks in. And then once 10 Dawn hits, it's basically a futile struggle. He will play 5 things every turn, and you can't really remove them because even any leftover ones he will just all attack with and then play them again brand new. And on top of the fact that it's impossible to contest, he will kill his own units using his down 10 cost the next turn anyways. So it's not only almost impossible, but also kind of pointless. You need to go for a game quickly after the 10 Dawn, and so you try to kind of build up the board as much as possible up until 10, and then fully pivot for going towards game, specifically using Black Hole because you can kill the Warcury, which denies the blocker and also the draw, and then you can deny the blocker of the Mars, and then you have 2 Dawn left to swing, for example, 7 face with your leader, and then a couple of Burgess swings, maybe a Teach swing, and hope that that's enough. If you don't really have everything yet, or you're not confident you can kill him yet, maybe you don't have enough black holes, maybe he has too much life and you don't have enough swings, the 10 cost Teach does work as a 1 turn stun type of thing. It's not good to chain because you lose the 10 cost chain battle, but just getting him on the board as a 12,000 swing Stunning the Jupiter that buffs up his other elders and working as a blocker generally ensures that you're not going to die that turn, and you're basically putting yourself into a delay the whole thing by one situation, where you say, okay, maybe I don't swing this turn, maybe I swing casually with Burgesses, mm, but then next turn I'm gonna go for the combo with black holes in game. I do want to note the promo teach seems to have great potential in this matchup. Because you generally have enough time to set him off, especially if you're going second. He then completely negates all his defenses, and you should have enough Burgesses set up where then in the following turn, using the 10 cost each promo and the Burgesses, and you're done, you can kill him. However, the promo teach isn't out yet, neither in the sim nor in real life. So once that comes out, that definitely will be a card to consider putting in as a one of. Until then, not possible. We continue on how to lose. The loss conditions, how can the game go in a way where we then end up doing badly. So first, if they just kind of smoothly hit everything, they find their searchers, they fill their trash quickly, they have 7 trash by turn 2 because they found multiple searchers, they get to play their elders on curve, they find all 5 by 10 dawn, and then play multiple 10 costs back to back. They get to live long enough basically to play multiple, and then you just lose by value because you couldn't tempo them down quickly enough. Mm, Kind of in a similar vein, if things just go badly for us, so we don't find enough Burgesses, we don't find stage, we don't find my age, the Burgesses are small and end up just dying easily to his rushers or normal swings, so that we lose board control and he gains it, and then adding the 10 cost value from his side on top of that just dooms us. Um, if it's more of a balanced state, we both have board, we will still lose if we get into a board competition of just constantly fighting for board. If he has more than one 10 cost, he just outvalues us. And now for some enemy cards to keep in mind as well. First, the Rusher. He's just a pain because not only is he a Rusher, which is always annoying against us for the aggro purposes, but his minus 2000 for the turn means he's very good at removing our Burgesses, especially if Emu has other swings like his leader or even more available, so that he puts the Burgess down minus 2000 and then it becomes a lot harder to defend. We want to avoid that if we can. His 10 cost just it's just broken. The insane value he gets from it, the many attacks, and the 2 blocker defense he gets as well, threatening game right away as soon as it's played. Scary card. Mm, Jupiter buffs his units up to 7,000, and that makes a board of 5,000 a lot scarier. He's one thing that if we can negate him using 10 cost Teach or Black Vortex, we can defend a lot better for that turn. And so that is one strategy we can use to stall out sometimes if we cannot quite go for game. And then he has the 2 events, the first being the 1 cost 4000, makes it a lot harder to just commit to game because with relatively little cards we can assume he's going to be able to counter out of some bigger things. And the equilibrium cannot be maintained. It's easy to forget, but it can also remove a 6 cost. And so be careful because this can remove not just your 5 cost, 4 cost blocker, but also your 6 cost Kuzan. And it can thus, since the target comes out rested from Kuzan, if you only have, for example, a 5 cost Kuzan in your trash to bring back with the 6 cost, then he can force you to bring out the 5 cost Kuzan right away rested and then swing into it to kill it. So that's something to be careful of. If he has the swings and you don't have a Burgess in trash, that is something that might happen. And of course, it can also be if he's trying to go for game and remove a blocker of yours. We continue with the curves. So I'm gonna start with odd. Mm, our ideal start is probably still Lafitte. Stage also works and Age also works. Basically, any of our searchers, with Stage and Lafitte being better because they have that reusability potential. Stage just to find as many searches as possible. Lafitte because if we can combine it on 3 with another Lafitte, we actually get an extra search off. And then if we've got nothing else playing, the blockers is also fine. It's not a problem at all because he has no way to get rid of them. So at some point we do want to set them up. So it doesn't feel bad at all to play them. It's just it would feel better to start setting up searchers. On 3, if we set up a Lafitte in the first turn and we manage to play double Lafitte, that's just ideal. He never plays any one costs that can kill Lafitte because even if he does play his one cost searcher, he will trash it for the draw. So he will always have to use a swing to get rid of our rested Lafittes. After, Lafitte priority, both stage and age work fine. They're basically equally good at that point. You do want to set up the stage at some point. After that, again, blocker is the next best option. Often here you'll also be in a situation where you just have that extra done left and throw in the blocker and a searcher. We're now running the 2k Shiryu, the 3 cost, and that can actually also be an okay play, just if we have nothing else. It does fill up our trash and it does create a bit of a threat. The problem is just that we can't really use it effectively. So if we play him on 3 because we can't play anything else, on 5 we probably want to play the 5 cost Kuzan, which means we don't have an extra Dawn left to attach to Shiryu. So for then he's dead, and then on 7 maybe we have the extra space, but that can be problematic. Swinging 7 phase isn't that bad either, just because he only has 4 life, and if we can get him to 2 down quicker, all the better. Next up, on 5, we want to play our 5 cost Kuzan and just leave him there. Next turn, swing with him and turn him into a Burgess. If we can't do that, just a Burgess and a 1 cost also works. We have a lot of 1 costs that we want to be playing. And if that doesn't work, we're also fine playing our blocker Shiryu or our blocker Workury, just something to be able to play. On 7 there's nothing clean, but we can play Kuzan in 1 costs, whether that's the 5 cost Kuzan or the 6 cost Kuzan. Also here swinging bigger is nice because he'll have a rested 5000 attack unit just to make sure we can actually get through it. Always helps. The kind of nice situation for us here is if, for example, we played a stage somewhere and won at 3, we got some searchers off and managed to play 1 cost blocker. On 5 we managed to play a Kuzan. And now on 7 we swing with the Kuzan, swing with our leader, turn the Kuzan into a Burgess and play another Kuzan from hand. Now we have he probably doesn't have a board left, and we have a Burgess, a Kuzan, and a blocker, and we're on a good route to potentially win. On 9, we can do 5 cost Kuzan and Burgess. This can just bring us 2 Burgesses suddenly, or also a Burgess and a blocker. If we have, instead of Burgess, a 4 cost blocker, then we can use the Kuzan to grab a Burgess and kind of get a similar result. If we can't do that, the 6 cost Kuzan and 1 cost is still nice. It's kind of a bit too much extra, but with the value of 6 cost Kuzan cannot be overstated. And we still have nice things we can do with the 1 costs. And the further in we get, the nicer it is to have that 7k swing. Because he's gonna want to start countering out of those. If you swing 7 phase into his 4 life, he'll happily take it, but once he's already down to 3, he has to start worrying about it. Lastly, Kuzan and Black Hole. If your opponent does have a Workury setup, and you have the Kuzan and nothing else really to do with it, it can be worth it to Black Hole the Workury, prevent the draw, get yourself the extra swing. You should only do this though if you are confident you have enough Black Holes later to still go for game. At 10 then, you go to Kuzan and blockers or swings, And if you don't really have a nice setup for that, then the 10 cost Teach also works. He's not as much of a priority play in this matchup, just because he just gets out flooded by the 5 Elders. Meanwhile, playing multiple Burgesses, for example, just gives us that extra tempo. But it's still a strong play if you can stun the 7 cost, and definitely something you can be content with. I added an 11 Dawn turn here that just basically means you reach a point where the best play is to just play double black hole and go for game. Then, even curve. This is nicer to a large degree just because his curve is a lot worse. At 2, we want to start with stage and any other searcher. Here, the double of feet combo doesn't really work, so just stage is best. On 4, Burgess is nice, even if we can't play Searcher right away. Because our win condition this matchup is to just get as many Burgesses as possible. Playing him on 4 here feels perfectly fine. If we can't do that, then Searchers are also solid because we can probably play a whole bunch. And if not, then Shiryo or Valkyrie also work. 6, Kuzan and 1 costs, or just Kuzan, the 6 cost, both work. Playing a 5 cost Kuzan here alongside a searcher or a blocker is quite nice. We'll leave it on board, and then next turn we can transform it. On 8, we can do Kuzan and 1 costs. Either one of them works, although at this point you are preferring the 6 cost because it gives you that extra protection. And then we can also play 2 4 costs if we have them available, something like 2 Burgesses or Burgess and a blocker. And if we don't have that option, then a 4 cost and black hole also works if you have Valkyrie to target. On 10, similar to on the odd curve, Kuzan and blockers swings is our best approach, and teach also works. And again, later on, once the time is right, go for the double black hole. You're gonna wanna start searching them, and then at the end find the second one to go for game. Some easy mistakes to make. So the emo matchup is somewhat complicated for both sides, and playing it perfectly is quite difficult, but there's some mistakes that are easier to make and thus also easier to avoid. The first is just going for life early and ignoring the enemy board, and then going for board later. Either of these works. I think the second one is a more common mistake. You just have to accept that you cannot win the board control game against your emo opponent unless he does not find more than one 10 cost, and you can't really rely on that. And so you need to accept and learn that you're going to go to pivot for game quickly after the 10 costs start dropping. It's easy to forget because he rarely plays it, but he does have the Equilibrium event to kill a 6 cost, and that can remove your blocker and suddenly leave you dead. So if you don't have that in mind, it's just important that you can lose a swing like that, or that you can lose your 6 cost Kuzan and end up forced to resurrect something bad. Burgess are win condition, and him dying is very problematic, and even though he's relatively big due to the Noose attack reduction, he can be swung into and killed. And so when he's not that much of a threat yet, swinging with him can be a waste when your opponent is reaching a later point where your swings don't actually take any of his resources anymore, they just take away from his swings. So if you know that your opponent is going to be dropping the 10 cost soon, that means he's going to be wiping out his entire board by himself. And so you swinging with a Burgess to get blocked doesn't cost him anything. That 5 Elder would be dead anyways. He does lose that swing, but he doesn't lose anything beyond that. So if your Burgess might die as a result, don't bother. Blocking too early or late with Kuzan, you want to get Burgesses back with the Kuzan, and you don't want them to get swung into and killed right away if possible. But so you don't want to block right away. But if you wait too long, your opponent may just decide to not swing, and you end up not being able to cash in your 6-cost Kuzan. And then at a point where you're really trying to go for game and swing big with Burgesses, you're stuck with this 6-cost 6000 attack blocker because you just waited too long to block with him early. Trashing too many black holes early on, they can feel not that useful, and you can think to yourself, hey, I still have one or two, but you need those. You probably need two, and if you trash too many of them using your stage, then you may just not have a win condition. 10 cost teach isn't as good in the Emu matchup. I think it can be tempting to some teach players, especially since Emu also plays with 10 costs and tries to chain them to try to somehow match that and build up a board of big teaches, but it doesn't work. It's too slow. He has too many attacks that we can't all block. And if you try to chain teaches in response to his, you're just gonna get outvalued. It's not gonna work. Since we're trying to win with Burges, we do want to defend them. But if the opponent Nustro swings into and reduces his attack, he can become a very easy target to a point where you need to accept he's going to die. And you can't keep countering or blocking to protect him. Especially if you know that another Nustro is gonna come and reduce his attack again, and then he still has that swing and the leader swing. It can just be best to accept, okay, this one is gone, and we're gonna protect the next one. When you take hits to life, especially after one, and now there's another one coming at your life that you can't counter out of, it is tempting to block. You don't want to be taking 2 damage, you don't want to be taking 3 damage in one turn, right? So I'll block this next attack, don't. He has no ways to remove blockers efficiently, so each blocker translates to a life, except that by taking the life you get an extra card in your hand, and because you can also use those blockers to protect your Burgesses, and go for that then. So don't hesitate to just keep taking life instead of blocking. If oftentimes you're going to want to counter out of the smaller swings, but if the question is, do I take a life or do I lose my blocker? Generally, the answer is take a life. Yeah, biggest mistake you can make is losing the dice roll and having to go first. But that aside, um, one last thing to note is that it's easy to forget that he can trash that extra card from his hand and get to 7 trash. If your opponent has, I don't know, 6 cards in trash and you decide to play your 4-cost Cheerio because you can in turn KO his 4-cost, he will just trash a card from hand, go to 7 and now be immune. So keep that in mind. Of course, any searchers will spike it heavily. But yeah, that's that. Now to general tips, more on the positive side. First, count his elders, both individually and the amount of 10 costs he's seen or trashed. He can, when he plays the actual 10 cost, trash one of the 5 elders from his hand using the effect to then have it ready in the trash. And theoretically, yeah, theoretically he could also trash one from hand, so that even if he only has 3 elders in trash, he could bring all 5. But because he generally wants to trash something from his board for the free draw before playing the 10 elders, that's not going to happen. So if your opponent has 3 elders in trash, he's not going to have all 5. 4 either. But generally, you're going to want to be paying attention to it to see how much you can expect and how soon. And if yeah, if he trashes a 10 cost or a War Curie, he will have another. 10 cost is his win condition, and War Curie is really nice against us because it's not on play and lets him draw and protects against our blocker. So if he's willing to drop one of those, it means he has at least one more. Mm, you're going to be wanting to drop cheap blockers early, just leave them on. As I mentioned before, you don't need to block with them unless you're protecting Burgess. Uh, Again, take life. Mm, if he's a 10 and he has a War Curie and you don't have more than that swing, then your swings don't equate to him losing a block or anything. It just equates to him having a card more and one swing less. If you really need to remove that extra swing, sure. But if it's not about that, just leave your Burgess standing and deny him the card. His board of 5 elders becomes a lot scarier due to Jupiter, and you can stop that with both Vortex and with Teach. Although if you're then in the position where he has Jupiter and not the other 4 elders, but just maybe 1 or 2, or even yeah, just 1, it can be worth it to instead Vortex the Emu leader to stop an attack in the same way, but also to stop him from drawing a free card using his leader ability. His stage is very balanced and fair, and so they decided that aside from playing 3 cost 10 drops and starting on the board without even losing your card in your hand, it was a bit too weak, so they decided to buff it to a 6k leader at 19 cards or more in trash. Now, this is flavor text, but it's still something to keep in mind when you're doing your math. If you can survive or not, keep in mind that he will potentially hit a point where he gets that free 1 done. Uh, Leave your Kuzan on board for a turn. Don't turn him into Burgess right away. Usually you're fine taking life, but you want to avoid your Burgesses dying. So being able to swing without having something be rested as a result on your side is generally worth it. And the 5k swings have value against him because all his targets are 5k and he doesn't really want to defend those very often. Remember that Teach isn't that good. I mentioned this a bit before earlier, but it can still stall nicely for 1 turn and then go for game the following one. It can be scary to try to go for game because you know he has the 4 cost event, the 1 cost 4000 event, kind of trauma from fighting against blue purple, and the Gum Gum Giant, but his countering is a lot less reliable than blue purple Luffy. Never Existed is a lot weaker than Gum Gum Giant because it doesn't replace itself, and he also can't cycle. And on top of that, Blue Purple Luffy gets more searches, and he gets unconditional searches, and he's gonna have uh, less cards than a Blue Purple Luffy. So if you're considering, mm, can I kill him? And then you notice, well, if that's a 2k and that's an event, and that's 1k, then I just lose. A good chance that's not the case. He doesn't have as much reliability without the on plays, and so you can just go for it sometimes. So after that whole bunch of theory, I wanted to show the whole thing a bit with a practical example. I think over the course of this game, a lot of the things that I mentioned that you should do, I do. Building up the Burgesses, slowing down the enemy plan, going for lethal when the time is right. And so I hope you enjoyed. Alright, Emo. Second. Okay, that is an impressively bad hand. And now we have a Lafitte, so it's fine. Just hope he doesn't have an event or an on-play. Ah, he has the event. After the mulligan. Unfortunate. Do I activate the Lafitte? Yeah, on 4. I want to play like War Curie or something. Or Burgess if I find. I want to grab the Burgess, but a lot of good options there. I want to find the Burgess, but and he top decks the Shalria. Oh, he doesn't top deck. He got it naturally. Well, it's probably still worth it for me to just leave it. Since he got the first search event, he's already pretty high in trash, and we probably can't deny the forecast. Okay. Okay, this is he has Mars, Peter, Nozero. The forecasts are not known yet. And we hit him with the 5k, of course. Okay, and now, what's the chance he's seen quite a bit of his deck now, though, so solid chance that he has the Elder Searcher. At this point, it doesn't really matter anymore. He's had enough time to find all the stuff he needs. So we can just leave it. There's nothing to be KO'd with the Mars, so unfortunate would be if he does have the Searcher. Nice. Wait, he doesn't have a single Elder to play? So what is this hand? Just events and counters? Oh, and potentially also 5 Elders. He didn't take this one, so he probably has multiple. At least 2, I would say. So he will chain the Elders once it's time. And here we just play... We don't have enough trash, so playing the Vivi is pointless. We just play stage into a Kuzan. Leave it at that. He got lucky with a shit ton of searchers, but in turn... Did I grab this 2k? I need to trash something. Wait, do I? It's kind of his fault for... oh no, he couldn't play the Mars. Yeah, I'll grab the 2k. Swinging with Burgess here is stupid. Alright, I suppose if he just has the 6 costs and 7 costs, then he can't play them. He already has Rush, so Nustro would kill Burgess. So I can't swing with Burgess. I can leave the on-plays off though, since Mars has no targets that can actually be KO'd. And he didn't have the Searcher last time. He has his 3rd Shalria. That is insane. He's going through his deck faster than I am. What's going into the trash? Yeah, I don't think I can get him to deck himself out, so this is just great for him. For 3... Has he still just not seen his forecasts? Are they all either at the bottom of the deck or in his life here? Okay, that goes through. Teach isn't actually bad since we're on the even curve. We can play him before his elders. Okay, so he does have that Workery. No black hole. I don't need more than... first we'll see. I don't have anything to grab, so... There's Burgess, exactly what we need, so that we have a trash target. 5, now he can block it. He draws a card. I'm fine just being rid of it though. Caribou my age maybe? In combination with a Kuzan. Grab another 5 cost and just set up. I was considering like, what if I just play Kuzan, Caribou, Nefertari? Get 3 blockers up and then play the 10 cost Teach bit afterwards. But my Burgesses are small. I want to buff them up with my age, and the VB isn't on board anyways. And I need the space to actually play him, so I'll do my age. Grab random 2k. Play these two. Are the swings big enough? Not really. 6k swings. Just to what? Have them die next turn? No, thank you. I'd rather wait. Okay. Kuzan, Caribou, pass. 2 Burgesses, 2 blockers, including a 6 cost Kuzan who can grab no Burgess, but he can grab a Kuzan. And because I have the other blocker and he doesn't really have anything big yet, that should be fine. If he wants to play for actual aggro, his options are to play the 7 cost for 3 and then just play the rusher manually, but then he doesn't have Dawn open. Then he would have 5 swing, 7 swing, 7 swing. Actually no, he goes to 6,000. So 6, 7, 7. I can see him just for 3 playing the 7 cost. Gets a bigger swing in with War Curie. If he doesn't want to do that, what is there for him to do? What is there to do for him? Maybe just play more blockers. Just 2 War Curies or something, or a War Curie in the other blocker. Those are solid plays, I think. Sets up a defense for him that he can use to protect his life, and also swing next turn if they live, and also draw a card if he has War Curie. Leave himself up to Dawn. He can swing like 7. Although it is funny that because he's at 6, I can force him to kill the Kuzan if he wants to use Leader Swing. War Curie swing from his side would be questionable, I guess. But probably fine. Oh, he KOs the Kuzan. Interesting. I will still play him. If he wants to swing into that multiple times, I will counter out of it. I think Lafitte is the least important. It's not bad for him. He does use most of his turn, and he won't have Dawn open, but... Oh, he just doesn't use Leader Buildy. Charlos will get wiped next turn anyways, as will this blocker. So, well, I still just go face. I negate... Which one do I negate? This guy isn't a problem anyways. With these I just go face. I need to start finding black holes. There's one, none in trash. So I should be able to find them. Kuzan doesn't have a Burgess to grab, which is unfortunate. Does he? He doesn't even have a blocker. Kuzan has no good targets, that hurts. I think preventing this one Valkyrie swing isn't that big of a problem. I think it's better to get the extra attack. We let him get the swing, we deny him the draw by not swinging into it. These small swings are gonna be annoying for him. I'll swing with Kuzan too. The question is, do I trash him afterwards? He'll die. And then I won't get the draw. But I don't really have a target. We will trash our Vivi. We don't need to. I'm gonna play use the Kuzan. I suppose I'll grab a Shiryu. We won't get to 12 anyways, so we just swing 7 twice now. I very much like this position. These are probably both 5 elders. So he's gonna go down to 1 life here. Then he has 2 swings against our board. Okay, so he does have an event. We use this, we grab the Shiryu, and we trash something useless. Probably, I'll actually leave the Vivi. So we might come to a situation where next game I commit to game, and then just at the end I can leave up 1 Don for Vivi, and if it turns out that I can't kill him after all, then I just do that. Charlos being a blocker is just fitting, because you really want to punch him in the face. Seven onto that. I don't really need to bother much with this, right? For 4 he's gonna play the Elders, he gets 1 rusher. That will make Burgess harder to defend. And then he may die. I have the Caribou, so I don't need the Vivi. Although I suppose based on the previous reasoning I might as well then drop the Stronger, but... Elders, everything gets trashed. He rushes onto Burgess. 7 onto 6. Well, he might be worried that I could counter out of it, so I'll do 8 onto 6. And I will just block that. And then he can swing again, and I will just block it with Caribou. Which I'm fine giving up anyways, because I need space to play something. Okay, 1 black hole present. That is not what I was looking for, but we have the mage. Come on, there we go. Black hole, probably game. We have this. Actually, the Shiryu is gonna come in clutch. Unironically, he's gonna get them 1k higher than they would otherwise be. So, there goes that. There goes that. We have exactly enough cards in hand to trash these 2 and draw 2. Hey, another black hole. Worked out perfectly. Exactly. Now the Burgesses are bigger and we keep swinging. 5 life. Yeah, okay. Beautiful. It's always fun to win against Emo. Satisfying victory. In conclusion, go second, lead ability starting at 4 Dawn, build up Burgesses, and go for game shortly after 10 Dawn by negating his blockers with Black Hole and swinging with Burgess. like, comment, all that fun stuff. Next up, I'm probably going to be dropping an ace guide and also some gameplay with commentary for Emu Ace, but also just general sim gameplay in OP13. So thank you for your time. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next video.